If naval gaming was a global sport, we here in South Africa might be competing for top honours and World Cups. Structurally, the country is actually in a much better position than many other emerging markets. We've got a strong, robust constitution, a vocal civil society, well-functioning legal and tax systems, and a modern and fairly well-developed infrastructure, though some of it is creaking at the seams. What is standing in our way to competing globally, though, quite clearly is talent. And just yesterday, the Minister of Science and Technology, Naledi Pandor, was bemoaning the lack of engineering graduates in the country. To find out how we can remain globally competitive and attract top international talent, it's a pleasure to welcome Jamie Robertson, CEO of global executive search firm Odgers Berndtson Sub-Saharan Africa, to this week's competitiveness feature. Evening, Jamie.
Hello there, Michael.
Now, I was chatting to someone in the local executive HR space just the other day, and they informed me that on the engineering front, your PRNs and the like were unwilling to get formally certified through their professional bodies because of the onerous responsibilities that now rest on a professional's shoulders. There's a fear of personal liability should anything go wrong. Would you say that red tape is a factor in our skills crisis?
Unfortunately, I would say that it is, and Odgers Berndtson, we specialise in the boardroom and non-executive space. So if I can respond on the side of being a non-executive perhaps, when you sign up to being a board member, the duties are pretty onerous, and the responsibilities are absolutely something should go wrong, and you're responsible to many shareholders. So when you're trying to attract talent into these kind of roles and, the professions, so let's take chartered accountants, for example, the responsibilities now of an auditor are absolutely massive, and you can't just hide behind a company anymore. It relies on you personally.
And that is an area we should certainly be looking at if we want to attract the kind of top talent that we need to. And we need to realize we're competing with a whole host of other emerging markets, aren't we?
That's right. I mean, over the last 10 years, Odgers Berndtson, we've really been attracting fantastic leaders to South Africa. And the good news is, actually, we're much more attractive now than we were 10 years ago. So, recently we did a search for a major retailer, and going to places like Canada, Hong Kong, Australia, people are saying, oh yes, I've been there on holiday, tell me about the security situation rather than just talking about crime, tell me about how do I get school places rather than sort of saying it's poor schooling. So we've actually strived forward in many respects. But what's unfortunate is when we get great talent, we seem to forget that they might be married to another brilliant person who could actually contribute to our economy. So we don't allow spouses to work in the country. And it's a real missed opportunity because we've got some very bright, talented people willing to contribute to the economy but can't.
But what do you make of the somewhat controversial, I'm probably being extremely diplomatic, immigration regulations, which do from the outside tend to target the executives at the top end when our porous borders are really being penetrated by an entirely different segment of the market altogether?
Yes, question. In terms of the new immigration laws coming in fact, if you look at the skills that the Minister has listed as essential and need for highly skilled visas, it's actually opened up somewhat. So it actually appears to be quite confusing because it's giving the message that we're tightening up. However, on the converse, it seems that we're relaxing in certain areas. So I think overall, I seem to be a bit confused by the current Immigration Act.
I think it's confused a lot of people, Jamie. You're not the only one. Now, if one were to, from your perspective, as a global executive search company, what are some of the low-hanging fruits that could be easily harvested to make ourselves far more attractive? I think we've touched on one or two, but there certainly must be many more.
Yes. And this is comparing ourselves to other emerging economies, if you would. So being able to open a business with the minimum amount of bureaucracy. I mean, it really is quite difficult here in South Africa to register a company, get your VAT number, get yourself set up with SARS. It's quite onerous and quite difficult, and it puts a lot of people off to entering the formal sector. Secondly, making finances available, so loans for businesses, coaching so that people can actually succeed, because most, as we know, a lot of young businesses fail. But then if we're looking at bigger business coming to the country, it's how do we attract the larger foreign direct investment rather than letting it go to Brazil or Russia or China or India, our BRICS colleagues. How do we attract it here? We've got to eliminate corruption. We have to attack this waste that's going on. The more we can do to stabilise the labour issues and really make sure that we have a great education growing in our country, which will lead to greater skills. I mean, that really is the priority.
Oh, absolutely. And, we must remember that we've also got a hugely advantageous time zone. I mean, we're halfway between the East and the West, which helps us facilitate trade in both directions. Do you think we take full advantage of this?
To some extent we do. I mean, if we look at our financial services sector, it's pretty flourishing, and it benefits from a similar time zone to London and Paris and Frankfurt, so hence we do, and we're a well-regulated industry in terms of financial services, so, absolutely yes, but we could do much better. So I'm a great believer that in order to help grow, and have a welfare state, we need wealth, but we also need fantastic leaders to be able to stimulate that and produce innovation. So if you look at innovative places around the world, Silicon Valley produces the most patents of anywhere in the world. Funnily enough, it's full of South Africans. But it has a very similar livability to Cape Town, for example. So, the question is, how could we make Cape Town the next innovative centre of the world, producing that? It's got a brilliant environment. The quality of life is absolutely great. It could really attract some brilliant people that could help us be more innovative and creative, which would ultimately lead to growth.
And we're seeing a lot of those projects in the form of Silica and Cape around Stellenbosch, and there is a drive to that. So I suppose that what you're saying is not falling on deaf ears. How do we stack up? We've had a weak rand for some time now. Yeah. How do we stack up when it comes to executive remuneration?
Yeah, that's also a very good question. Poorly is the honest answer. If you look at a banking chief executive, they could earn as much as 12 times the amount in the US, indeed 4 times the amount in Australia. And it's a really unpalatable subject for many. It's not executive pay that's really the issue, it's the gap between the highest paid and the lowest paid. And that gap is enormous in South Africa. So what can we do to eliminate that? Is really to spend more on upskilling our people so that we can pay them more, so it's justifiable, and they contribute to the environment. But that unfortunately takes time. It's not something that's just going to happen overnight. It takes a long time to develop that kind of skill base.
And it takes a culture of engagement. And I think there is a lot of apathy in the South African case, where we just expect our problems to solve themselves, and people are perhaps slightly unwilling to roll up their sleeves and get involved, and perhaps have a slightly more proactive and positive approach to things. We'd be able to surprise ourselves somewhat. Thank you so much. Jamie Robertson, Chief Executive of global executive search firm Odgers Berndtson Sub-Saharan Africa, for this week's competitiveness feature here on Classic Business, brought to you by Business and Arts South Africa.